Well, that was closer than it was supposed to be, folks. The All Blacks heavy favourites against a team which the media was calling out left, right, and centre for not being full strength, for being disrespectful, for being a BC team or whatever. And yet it is 31-27, albeit with 3 disallowed tries for the ABs. It finishes within a score at the death. So it's a win for the ABs, but it's a moral victory for the French lads. They kicked high balls well. They were better under the high balls than the All Blacks guys were, and they tackled the absolute house down. 1 turnovers when they needed to. The All Blacks, a little bit disrupted with Severis going off in the first minute. They managed to break the line at times, but didn't quite land those killer punches to get the tries that they would have liked. Although, as I said, they may have only got 4. They could have had 7 if not for some disallowed ones. We'll go through the key events and the stats of the game. You guys can let us know your thoughts and how well does this set up game number 2 next week in Wellington. As I said, Reece puts his head into the hip of Segon, the number 10 for France early, and he has to go off. Obviously fails in HIA because he knocked himself out pretty quick smart. So a bit of a early rejig to the AB's backline, certainly not how the plan would have been going down for Razor, but that's just rugby. Sometimes you lose a guy in the first few minutes. It happened in the Wales and Japan game as well. And the All Blacks, honestly, were stuck in their own half early on. They were really, really struggling with the high balls that the French were putting their way and just too many knock-ons. Handling just looked a little bit lacking that kind of clinical edge. And the French, when they had their first chance to go for poles, they took them a long-range kick from Segon, nailed it pretty well. So 3-0 to France. Jordie Barrett looked to have scored the first try of the game, which would have been a pretty nice reply from the All Blacks, but it ends up being the first of 3 tries, as I mentioned, to be disallowed. Roygaard had a great snipe in the build-up, and Roygaard was generally very busy around the park. He is such a weapon when he opts to run the ball. He's a really hard guy to bring down, and more often than not, he breaks the first tackle. But as I said, that one gets TMO'd for a knock-on in the build-up from Fletcher Newell. And it's almost like a 14-point swing, because instead of the All Blacks getting 7, France gets 7 from the resulting scrum from that knock-on. It's brutal for the ABs, but it's a line break from Atisogbe from that scrum. Gaetan is able to go close, and then Guillard is able to power over from close range. So 10-0 for France. This is not how this game was supposed to be going, but maybe highlights a bit of the depth in French rugby right now, that these guys are able to go down to Dunedin and put the All Blacks under all kinds of early pressure. But they didn't exit. It's a bane of many coaches' existences, you feel. Like after you've just scored points, just get a solid catch and exit. Ligarac gets charged down by Scotty Barrett from his box kick. It gives the chance for the All Blacks to go through some phases, up the guts, and then Leo Willie to Beauden Barrett on the loop with Will Jordan finishing it off. 7-10. From an All Blacks perspective, that is suddenly looking a lot more comfortable than it was. France go through and concede a bunch of penalties, including a scrum penalty, which means like the All Blacks are really able to piggyback their way up the field. They get a maul, which is really going nowhere, and then D-Mac with his steps is able to go close. Tupavai is able to go over. It's a quick fire double from the ABs. It's 14-0. That's how this game is supposed to go, right? The All Blacks are supposed to be the more experienced side, the home side. At the end of their Super Rugby season, a lot of these guys should be in good form, even if some of the cohesion's maybe not quite there. They're supposed to be able to score tries, I don't want to say at will, but at least to be able to score a fair few against this French team. 14-10. But Ligarac's next penalty kind of halts that momentum for the ABs. I feel like it's a wise move. I mean, it's test match rugby. It's not Super Rugby. To go for the 3 points, it stops the 14 unanswered points from a French point of view. So it's 14-13, back to being a 1-point game. And then there is one more try in the first half. This one is Proctor, who in the first half you felt like was a little bit quiet at times. He gets the ball to Beauden Barrett, who gets it to Will Jordan, who's passed to Jordie Barrett is pretty low. Like, Jordie Barrett's a big dude. He's like well over 6 foot something. It could be a lock if he'd maybe bulked up a wee bit, but he takes the ball really low to the ground and is still able to power over in the corner for the try. So, yeah, 21-13. is by no means emphatic, but the All Blacks have had, as I said, one disallowed try and plenty of other chances to go a big in just for dropping the ball, not being able to contest the high balls well. So it's by no means game over, but it's a comfortable enough lead for the ABs, which at halftime I honestly expected the All Blacks to get better, to put France under more pressure and to stop dropping the ball and to just put on some more tries. Basically, the halftime stats, like the territory 63-37, the possession 61-39. They've had 6 line breaks to 1, and they've had 15 defenders beaten to 7. But for me, the key one is the drop balls. Like turnovers conceded is 9-4. So the All Blacks are just not being clinical enough. But I figure if you take the turnovers conceded out and leave all the other things in there, the possession, the territory, the defenders beaten, the line breaks, you're surely going to get some points, right? Well, maybe not, because they knock on the restart, the All Blacks. Not the cleanest way to start after all what you've said in the sheds at halftime. France are able to go through 14 phases, and that man, Gabin Villiers, he is able to finish it off for France. So it is the perfect start for the half for them. Back to a 1-point game, 21 points to 20. Rugby did go close to the line. Villiers got himself back involved where he won a turnover at the breakdown. I thought for Daisy was well off his feet, but that's kind of by the by because the All Blacks scored from the next attack anyway. Bowden Barrett came round the corner and gave it to that man, Will Jordan, who again breaks a tackle to get the 4th try of the match for the All Blacks. But that's the last try the All Blacks will score. It's 28 points to 20. So, again, not comfortable enough to be game over. Kind of expecting the All Blacks to push on. And boy, if they didn't have enough territory in the second half. What the French had after conceding that try was 16 men on the field. So credit to the officials for not starting the game with France having 16 men on the field. I'm assuming they probably should have been more alert that they shouldn't have let 16 men on the field in the first place, but they didn't cause an incident by playing with 16 against 15. And even with 15 against 15, they were still able to score France. Van Tonda, who'd only just come on, he managed a big line break, was close to about a metre out, and then with advantage, they were able to get Cameron Wilkie, who'd only just come on off the bench as well. Maybe speaks to the kind of good timing of the bench from France, because they bring on the subs and they immediately get reward from it. I feel like it's an area where Razor hasn't quite mastered yet. Like you saw Rassie with South Africa really refined. He went from the bench being a weakness to a strength. This is, I think, a strength of the French and this bench play. We didn't really see it from the All Blacks bench as much in this one. But again, back to a bloody 1-point game, 28 points to 27. Then Villiers got himself yellow carded for a deliberate knock-on. I'm going to be honest, I know that's common for yellow cards to be given in those kind of circumstances, but I don't like it. There was barely any time between Jordan offloading the ball and it hitting Villiers' hand. At most, I would have liked to see a penalty for that one. But down to 14 men, the All Blacks look to have scored 2 times. One through Proctor. He goes over, but Bickyard is able to get a hand on Proctor's arm just to dislodge the ball enough that the ref said it to knock on. Adi Savia was complaining that there's still fingertips on the ball, but not enough for the referee and the TMO. And then another one when the All Blacks have got a big old overlap and it ends in a try out in the corner, but Tossi is pinged for obstruction. I don't feel like the obstruction was going to make a difference to the play, but I guess if it's not going to make a difference, don't put yourself in that position. But I feel like, yeah, one of those tries maybe could have been given. It wasn't. So, yeah, it's still a very close game. So many All Blacks phases, so many French tackles, so many French turnovers won. The All Blacks start resorting to kicks. The kicking game is not quite on song. The French are able to put in a couple of really nice marks, including a great one from Atisogbe. Eventually, the All Blacks have to pull the pin and just opt for a 3 on 72 minutes to at least take it beyond a penalty, because we've already seen France hit a 50-metre one. You don't want to be going behind and having to chase the game, because the French have not been wanting to concede any points. 31-27. That is the final score in the game. France are forced to try and chase things. Now they've got to score a try. They ended up knocking it on. The All Blacks were able to win a resulting scrum penalty and see the game out, essentially, but it is not emphatic. And as my dad said, lucky they didn't send the A team, if that's what the B or C team can do. Stats-wise, like the line breaks is 11-3. to the ABs. The All Blacks had 62% possession, 63% territory. The French had to make 224 tackles to the ABs 121. And yet, there's not that much in this game. It's a great defensive shift. I do feel like the All Blacks will get the attack clicking, but the French are going to get better for this game as well, for sure. Savia, 20 carries, 80 meters. That's a great return. Atisogbe, fantastic for France, as said, under the high balls. So was Spring under the high balls, 77 meters from him. He's the top French ball carrier. Holland on his debut, first in the line of All Blacks tacklers with 17. Leo Willie was second with 12, so the two debutants putting in good shifts. Alexander Fisher, though, for France, 20 tackles. That's a bit of a Herculean shift from him as well. But if the All Blacks get those 3 disallowed tries, this is looking kind of how the predictions went. But they didn't get them. And France kept on playing for the 80. It is, as I said, it's a win. But it is also a moral victory, I think, for the French. You guys let us know your thoughts on the game. Where do you think this leaves both teams? How do you see game 2 going? Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And I will talk to you guys again soon. See you later.